Okay, we're going to be continuing with another WarFrame and giving her some rankings and some scores. So we're going to be looking at Hildryn. Hildryn, of course, being a strong, independent woman who need no man. And of course, she takes the concept of a shield-based WarFrame to its absolute logical conclusion. So let's have a look at her kit. Hildryn's first ability is Balefire Charger, so it's basically an exalted weapon, and I believe it's the only truly exalted weapon that is not tied to a fourth ability. Her second ability is called Pillage, and it's basically a wave of energy that is sent out. This strips energy, and then when the wave comes back like so, it replenishes Hildryn's shields. Her third ability is called Haven. So Haven is a multifactorial ability. It's multi-layered in the sense that you can link up to enemies and deal damage to them, or you can link up to allies and provide them with extra shields. And finally, Hildryn's fourth ability is Aegis Storm, and it basically hovers over the ground like so. This stuns enemies and also deals damage to them. You can also provide energy orbs at random with this ability, which I will talk about a little bit more later on. Hildryn's passive, of course, is that she has a gigantic shield pool that acts as her energy pool. So she has no energy. Instead, her shields are draining every time she uses an ability. She also has a much stronger shield gate, so that shield gate lasts for 5 seconds as her hard shield gate, as opposed to the usual 1 second of invincibility, although apparently the wiki says that it's 3 seconds. I'm not 100% sure about that. Because Hildryn has no energy pool, the idea with energy orbs is that when she picks one up, it just immediately starts her shield regeneration, and it also restores a bit of her shields. Okay, let's start off with Hildryn's damage output. Now, Hildryn's damage is mostly revolving around her Balefire Charger. So her first ability, of course, being an explosive weapon, it does damage, and it is actually an explosive weapon like so. So you can actually hit multiple enemies provided they're clumped up together, which is really, really good. So because Hildryn's Balefire Charger is an exalted weapon, you can actually build it by itself. Here is a Balefire build that I'm using. It is a one former build. It's nothing particularly special for a weapon that, in my opinion, is not particularly special. It's usable, but you know, it's kind of just there. It's really a raw damage kind of weapon with a sort of okay status chance, a completely non-existent critical chance, a definitely non-existent critical multiplier, so it's not something you really want to think of. I think if you want to put some more former into it, you could actually swap these out for the 9090 mods, and that would give the Balefire a lot more damage. Otherwise, don't really see much of a way of sorting this weapon out. Going for a prime heated charge would be a really, really good idea for this weapon if you really want to put in the effort to make this weapon a lot stronger. In the meantime, though, despite what the UI tells you, if you do a charge shot, you will be doing double damage. So, for example, against this corrupted bombard, we only did 3,087 damage with that single shot of the Balefire, but if we charge it up, we did around 5,674 damage. One more time, it's 5,674. So it's not double damage necessarily, but you are doing more damage against just that corrupted bombard alone with a charged shot. So against trash mobs, the Balefire, even with my build, is already pretty good. These are level 100 trash mobs, being your crewman and your butcher. That's already good enough to wipe out entire maps of them, provided you are hitting them with a clumped up amount. But against these heavies, it's not the greatest. At some point you can probably do quite a bit of damage, like that last shot there did alright. But, you know, it's a bit iffy. You can land headshots though, so that's nice, but typically I don't really care all too much about it. Also keep in mind you can use Balefire whilst in Aegis Storm, and it does look like you're carrying 2 Balefires, but you actually only have the power of 1, so there we only did 1,868 damage with that Balefire in Aegis Storm, and that should be the same amount of damage that you're doing with Balefire when you're only using quote-unquote one of them because you're standing on the ground. In the meantime, Hildryn does have another way of dealing damage, and that is by stripping armor. So Hildryn's Pillage ability is capable of stripping a portion of a target's remaining armor, depending on your power strength. So What that means is that when you use it multiple times, you will have diminishing returns, because when you use it the first time with my build, you strip 63% of a target's armor, but when you use it the second time, you only strip 63% of what remains. I've done the math. 2 strips of armor from pillage only results in 76% of a target's armor being stripped in the end, so that's basically how that works. Hildryn is also able to do some damage with her Aegis Storm and her Haven ability. So if you use Haven by itself, as we're linking to all of these enemies here, we're doing like 23 damage to this Corrupted Heavy Gunner, we're doing 415 damage to this Butcher, so, you know, it's not that good. It's kind of meaningless, even against non-armored enemies like these crewmen. In similar fashion, you can actually do some damage with Aegis Storm, so the idea is that the higher you fly, the more damage you do. When we go down, we are doing significantly less damage to these Bombards and these Corrupted Heavy Gunners, but when we were higher up, we were doing about 50% more damage, but even then, it's still not that powerful. So it's not really something that I really care about with both of these abilities. Even if you strip all of their armor, it's not particularly fantastic. So Hildryn's Balefires are ultimately good, but not amazing in my opinion, and her armor stripping capabilities are valuable, but comparably weaker to a lot of other Warframes that have armor stripping capabilities like Oberon or Trinity or Mag, or hell, even Banshee has a much more powerful armor stripping capability than Hildryn. So putting that all together, I would probably only score Hildryn's damage at 6 out of 10. Okay, let's talk about Hildryn's survivability. Now, right out of the gate, Hildryn comes with the lowest amount of health, the obviously highest amount of shields, and an ironically high amount of armor at 300. This actually puts her at the 7th highest available amount of armor in the game right out of base, which kind of makes no sense to me because she has the lowest amount of health possible. Hildryn's main survivability comes from replenishing shields, and her shield, of course, having a much stronger version of shield gating. So how does this work? Hildryn at base, once she loses her shields, will have invulnerability for around about 3 or 5 seconds, depending on who's counting. Now, the wiki says 3 seconds, but I think it's actually around about 5 seconds. That's just based on my observations from something like that. Meanwhile, when Hildryn has overshields like so, she's actually completely immune to toxin procs. So here we are affected by toxin, but because we have overshields, the toxin is actually not going through our overshields at all. This is something that is only unique to Hildryn with her overshields and her shield capabilities. But once we lose those overshields, that toxin damage will go through those shields and start hitting our health, which will probably cause us to die instantly. So whilst Hildryn has no way of healing herself, she does have ways of replenishing and also producing overshields. The first way, of course, is to use Pillage. When you use Pillage, the wave that comes back will provide you with overshields and will also regenerate shields if you've actually lost them. However, you can't really use Pillage when you are in Aegis Storm. I can press 2 all I want, but it's never going to happen. So instead, we have to use another way, which is to use a mod called Balefire Surge. This is obviously an augment for your Balefire, and the way it works is when you do a direct hit, you will replenish shields. You do another direct hit, you could actually end up giving yourself some overshield, so that makes it really, really powerful. Basically, as long as you can aim with your Balefire, you should be fine. Like so. You don't have to be in Aegis Storm either to use Balefire Surge, as long as you actually hit something with your Balefire, like so. You will get your shields back, regardless of whether you are flying or whether you are standing with your feet on the ground. Side note, this augment also allows you to get rid of nullifier bubbles in an instant fashion. So, how do we build Hildryn? Well, here is a way of building Hildryn. It is a 2-former build that I'm using on her, which is strangely high for a Warframe that isn't a prime, for me anyway, but either way, this is a build that I'm using. It seems to be working pretty well for her. This also demonstrates two other ways that we can replenish Hildryn's shields in a very rapid fashion, and that is through the use of Arcane Aegis and Arcane Barrier. These are very powerful with Hildryn. If all that fails you, you still have access to some very powerful arcanes in the form of Arcane Aegis and Arcane Barrier. Because of Hildryn's extremely high shield pool, she has far more opportunity to activate either of these arcanes, which makes her very, very powerful. In a similar way, you can also bring a Moa or a Sentinel that has the Guardian mod equipped. This is effectively another version of Arcane Barrier, but instead of having a chance to activate, it instead has a 30-second cooldown. Since Hildryn is a shield-based warframe, I won't be docking any points for not being able to quote-unquote heal herself, while shields are still generally ever so slightly worse than the health and armor combo, although I guess far better than what they used to be now that shield gaining is a thing. Hildryn's shields are the exception, so I would still give her survivability a score of 10 out of 10. In some scenarios, she's actually tankier than Inaros. Okay, let's talk about Hildryn's crowd control. Now, Hildryn has a hard stun in the form of her Aegis Storm. So the idea is when you activate Aegis Storm like this, all of these enemies are hard stunned. They can't do anything. Even if they were unpaused, they can't do anything because they're hovering in the air like Hildryn. In much the same way that if you are higher above the ground, you do more damage to enemies with Aegis Storm. If you are lower on the ground, you actually stun more enemies. So that's basically the idea with Aegis Storm. Just kind of figure out what you want to do. Do you want to be higher above the ground to do more damage, or do you want to be lower on the ground to stun more enemies? Just keep in mind that if you stun more enemies, you do end up draining more of your shields per second. So that is something that you're going to have to keep an eye on, although you should be able to keep up with that shield drain if you're using something like Balefire, especially for a build like mine. Like so. I can effectively stun them infinitely because of Balefire Surge. It is pretty damn strong. Now, you may have also noticed that Balefire Surge on occasion can sometimes just fling enemies off the map as well in a form of ragdoll, so that could be really, really good, although I wouldn't really rely on it a whole lot. But that's literally it. Because Aegis Storm is a mass crowd control ability that hard stuns basically everyone who gets hit by it, that basically gives Hildryn's crowd control a score of 10 out of 10. Okay, let's talk about Hildryn's support capability. Now, Hildryn has two ways of supporting her allies. The first one is through the use of Haven. So the way it works is that when you link up an ally with Haven, like a Spectre or a Moa, just something like that, the idea is that it increases their maximum amount of shields. It also gives their shields some faster regeneration, so that is really, really good. Now, when the ally WarFrame loses the link, the excess shield becomes overshields. So, like that. Spectre now has overshields, and so does my Moa. Although I feel like with Spectres and Moas, they do actually lose some of those overshields because I guess the math doesn't really work out for them. Allies also get access to Hildryn's stronger shield gating capabilities, which is also pretty damn strong. But all of this, of course, doesn't really work with warframes that do not have shields like Nidus or Inaros. Of course, the other way that Hildryn can support her allies is by using Aegis Storm, because enemies who are affected by Aegis Storm drop energy orbs, which is extremely valuable in my opinion. This is definitely something that you will find a lot of allies of Hildryn will not be complaining about, which is a lack of energy, because there's just going to be a ton of energy orbs that are just scattered across the battlefield for them to pick up and restore their energy. So that is really damn strong. So whilst Hildryn can't obviously heal her allies, her shield bonuses are a pretty damn good compensation, especially in this new age era of shield gating for everyone. Aegis Storm providing allies with free energy orbs, on the other hand, that is super dope. So I would give Hildryn's support score a 9 out of 10. Okay, let's talk about Hildryn's kit usability. So Balefire and Haven are perfectly fine abilities that I have no real issue with, so they're both going to get their 2 out of 2 points. Awesome. Hildryn's passive is also very, very strong, so it will get its 2 out of 2 points. No issues there. Now when it comes to Aegis Storm and Pillage, here's the thing. You can't use Pillage while you're in Aegis Storm. No matter how much I try to press it, it won't work, like I said before. So this is the deal. Collectively, they're both going to have a score of 3 out of 4. So whether you dock a point from Aegis Storm for not being able to use Pillage at the same time, or whether you dock a point from Pillage for not being able to use it whilst in Aegis Storm, doesn't matter. Either way, one of them is going to lose a point. I personally prefer to use Aegis Storm constantly, so I'm going to dock a point off Pillage for not being able to be used in Aegis Storm. This is obviously different to, say, Titania, who has a kit that can be used while in Razorwing. You can use her first, second, and third abilities while in Razorwing. For Hildryn, you can only use your first and third abilities while in Aegis Storm, so that is going to be a bit of a problem. Either way, what that means is that Hildryn has a kit usability score of 9 out of 10. So with a damage score of 6 out of 10, a survivability score of 10 out of 10, a crowd control score of 10 out of 10, a support score of 9 out of 10, and a kit usability score of 9 out of 10, this brings Hildryn's overall score to 8 out of 10. So Hildryn is a 9 out of 10 Warframe, a very tanky Warframe who also packs a serviceable amount of damage. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with any of the assessments that I made about Hildryn? Let me know. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.